Hi, thanks Jeremy, thanks everybody for coming early in the morning. I wrote out all my notes to the point where my first note says writer and editor from Melbourne, just in case I forgot to introduce myself. So as Jeremy mentioned, I am an editor at The Good Copy here in Melbourne. That worked? Okay, great. I am the managing editor at Rooftop Cinema, a coordinator at the Independent Photography Festival. Our program just went online if you want to come to any events, just a little plug. And I'm on the Emerging Writers Festival's Programming Advisory Committee, and I'm the founding editor and only editor of Film Fatales, which is a print zine about the places where film and feminism intersect. It's a very kind of non-academic, fun, colourful publication about women in film. We're going into our 7th issue at the moment. And as a writer, I've also contributed to places like Rolling Stone, Rookie, Jezebel, Pitchfork, and some other places there. I'm not going to say them all. But I've done all of these things at the bottom, and most of the things at the top. Is this in a good spot? Is that better? Okay, I don't know. All in the past year. And realizing that is shocking to me. None of these things is not shocking to me. I was going to do the emoji of this is the Gmail emoji, but I was going to do the iPhone one of like the big eyes, but I realized that I sent it to a friend the other day and she was like, what are you embarrassed about? And I was like, it's not the embarrassed emoji. So my own kind of resume is kind of the most shocking thing to me. I'm taking this theme really literally, I'm sorry. But as I was kind of figuring out what I was going to say today, I was like, what are some other things that are really shocking? And they're things like the fact that Diane Sawyer was married to Mike Nichols, the film director. Did anyone else know that? I found that out like a week ago, but after he had died, so I didn't get to like enjoy it. That Jason Mantzoukas, that really dirty comedian who's like on The League, is really into Gilmore Girls. And then I went off on a bit of a tangent because I was like, oh my god, Gilmore Girls is coming back. This news that broke this week. People aren't skeptical that Gilmore Girls is coming back, like I am, because I don't know if I want it to come back. And then last week I interviewed Lauren Graham from Gilmore Girls, so like the most shocking thing to me is that I talked to a Gilmore Girl, and she knew about Film Fatales, and she, like that, and then I was like, people in general know that I do stuff and want me to do stuff with them sometimes, like stand here and talk to you. This is like me kind of doing work for somebody. Thanks, Jeremy. And yeah, I know the theme is not meant to be taken so literally. It feels funny holding both these things. But I know the theme isn't supposed to be taken so literally, but yeah, I kind of got on a roll. Another shocking thing to me is in May of this year, okay, now I figured it out. I did a TED Talk at the Sydney Opera House. And that sentence alone is very shocking and surprising. And not just because someone asked me to do it and thought that I had something to say, but that I managed to stand there with like lights and cameras and people like this. And I talked for 10 minutes and I like said stuff. And then I came off stage, but instead of feeling like proud and excited about what I'd done, I just felt kind of stunned and like I'd gotten away with something, like I'd kind of tricked everybody. Because I never studied writing or editing or public speaking. Can you tell? But like, can you study public speaking? I don't know. But now I get asked to do them, and that's really surprising. And I write for Rookie, which is a website for teenage girls. And sometimes those readers will email me and ask me questions and ask for advice, and that makes me feel like kind of guilty because I don't know what I can say to them, because I kind of boil my career and all the things that I've done down to like luck or being in the right place at the right time. I was putting these slides together yesterday as I sat at my desk, and I looked up and I realized that above my desk I had this thing that just said, "At least you're still trying." Like that's my like motivational message to myself. Oh, sorry, I keep hitting this. Because I never laid out a 5-year plan for my life or my career, and I didn't set out these things as like achievements or goals for myself. And I know some people who have. I know some people who like aspire in life to give a TED talk, for example. And that makes me feel sometimes like I just kind of came in and like stole an opportunity from somebody else who actively wanted it and like is working really hard for it. Does that sound crazy? That wasn't meant to be a joke. Okay. But I feel kind of like an imposter sometimes, like I'm going to get exposed for like not being legit. I don't know. But I feel kind of relieved to have done all these things and that people get excited about. So when I downplay and I'm kind of self-deprecating about how cool these achievements are, it sounds like I'm like being falsely modest or like super humble or like I'm just like totally lying. So I watch that a lot, but I think there are lots of reasons, and obviously everyone's kind of reasons for just kind of downplaying, like, no, not me, like, don't pay any attention to me at all ever. Kind of comes down to two things that specifically affect women in creative industries, but, you know, they can affect everyone, I'm sure. I don't know, I can't speak for anyone who's not me. But they're called the confidence gap and imposter syndrome. So the confidence gap, who's heard of this? Who's read about it? Yeah, cool. In a piece she wrote for Rookie a few weeks ago, this is the website that I write for, my friend Estelle Tang wrote this piece about how, about talking about herself, and how there are like, I didn't check this, a myriad of, or just myriad, factors affecting her ability to speak about herself in like any way that isn't totally dismissive of herself. She said, "Some people were born into families obsessed with soccer, but my birthright was modesty. When I surfed up on into the world, I lucked into 4 cultural contexts that frowned upon talking about yourself in a positive way. Number 1, I was raised a Catholic. Number 2, my parents are Chinese, and in Chinese culture, modesty is highly regarded." Estelle goes into more detail on each of these points. It's not just like Catholic, Chinese, it's not just a list of factors. So you should go and read it. Number 3, she said, "I grew up in Australia where we have something called tall poppy syndrome, where people who are visibly talented and successful are tall poppies who need to be cut down if they do too well." And number 4, there's an argument that women are less confident than men, despite there being no proven difference between their respective ability levels, perhaps because women are so often encouraged to be quiet and submissive, while men are pretty much fine to wave a flag that says, "I'm amazing." So these are all factors and things that Estelle can't control, but she can control her responses to them. So yeah, you should go and read this article, because then she laid out like 3 steps for like being able to talk about yourself and coming to terms with being like kind and honest about yourself. And the confidence gap has become, so that last point was referring to the confidence gap, this like disparity between our perception of our abilities. And the confidence gap has become kind of a shorthand for the ways that women in professional areas downplay or underestimate their skills and abilities. And I got a harsh lesson in this earlier today and earlier this week when I was preparing this talk, and I was trying to write my bio at the top, and I was like, oh, I can't say everything because then it'll sound like bragging, and I can't talk about what I actually do because it'll sound like I'm obsessed with myself. And I had this instinct to like play it down, so that intro at the top was like very hard to do. And the confidence gap was kind of brought to everyone's awareness in this big article on The Atlantic from a few years ago, I think, or last year. Sorry, I hope you can't serve me ads. But we as women are given tools and tricks to try to counterbalance these negative thoughts. We're told to lean in and adopt the Superman pose. Have you guys read about the Superman pose? It's like standing like Superman, like this. And apparently if you do it for 10 minutes a day, you are more confident. And this, Yeah, powerful postures that make you more powerful, sure. The caption underneath this photo said, Amy Cuddy, here in the Baker Library at Harvard, discovered that the way you sit can change your cortisol levels. So this woman who did a TED Talk about this thing, if you want to watch it from a few years ago, she was teaching a business course, I assume at Harvard, where that photo was taken. And she noticed that the women in her class were like physically trying to like minimize the amount of space they took up. Sorry, I keep doing that. They were wrapping their arms around themselves, trying to make themselves smaller. And I think once you're aware that this is like a thing that women tend to do, like go out on the tram, go to some public space, and you'll start noticing it happening around you once you're looking for it. Where their male classmates were doing the opposite. She said they're leaning back, stretching out, draping their arms around chairs. We know from studies of facial feedback that if you smile, you fake yourself into feeling happier, and we wondered whether just asking people to spread out would help them feel more powerful, and it did. And I'm going to get heavy for 1 second, so here are some pictures of Beyonce doing the Superman pose, so you don't think I'm too intense. But we have to do these things because we need to, because we live in a world where women have to change their behaviour to be respected or seen on the same level as men for doing the exact same things. And we have to do them because it's easier for us as individuals to change our mannerisms than it is to like try to change the entire world. And as the writer Jessica Valenti said in a piece about the confidence gap, she said it's not a personal defect as much as it is a reflection of a culture that gives women no reason to feel self-assured. Okay, Beyonce, thank you. So next onto imposter syndrome, and who's heard of imposter syndrome? It's maybe a little more common, yeah. So this phrase came from an academic paper published in the late 1970s. I highlighted the bit I'm going to quote from. It's something that affects more women than it does men, and when it was first written about in this paper, it was called a phenomenon in which high-achieving women believe they are really not bright and have fooled anyone who thinks otherwise. I'm just going to take a sip of water. You can read that thing if you want. It's, So that idea that I talked about earlier about feeling the need to downplay or brush off a cool thing that happened, or like shifting the praise onto somebody else, or insisting that I was in the right place at the right time to get something, or that I'm really lucky, these are manifestations of imposter syndrome. And they're a lot easier to deal with than just being like Amanda with her one new Twitter follower and her hate is gonna hate wallpaper, and just saying thank you, because that means that you're accepting the praise that somebody gives you. If you want another visual of imposter syndrome, think of Taylor Swift's surprise face every time something great happens to her. And we make fun of it like it became a meme, but I kind of feel what Taylor's like, doing, because the louder that the voices of support are, the louder those inner voices get that tell you, like, count your blessings, like they're going to take it all away soon, this can't last, you're going to be exposed as like a faker or a hack or an imposter. There are lots of other famouses who have talked about feeling imposter syndrome, people like Tina Fey, Don Cheadle, Kate Winslet, Meryl Streep. And Maya Angelou, who once said, I've written 11 books, but each time I think, oh no, they're going to find out. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. And I felt this way earlier when I saw my name attached to some articles on RollingStoneUS.com. I don't know what the URL is. RollingStone.com. And I felt like I tricked them into letting me write analyses of Kanye West and the Kardashians, which are things that I really care about, but I didn't think I should be allowed to talk about for Rolling Stone. And the confidence gap existed when, despite the hundreds and hundreds of hours that I've spent watching all of the Kardashian shows, and there are like 9, and obsessing over all of Kanye's music, I figured I needed more experience and credibility to be allowed to say what I had to say, especially for a magazine like Rolling Stone that I grew up reading and held a lot of cultural and emotional weight. And so this very cool thing made me feel like a fraud once it happened. But I don't want to be all neggy. So the way that I've tried to overcome this feeling that has so far kind of seemed to work is to focus on the process and what it took to get there rather than the result, which is my name on this thing. And when I looked up process over result, I found all these really bad motivational images. But there's some truth in them, even though they're super cheesy. Yeah. This one's just a road. So, you know, I might be totally overwhelmed by like the history and the reputation of that magazine, to use Rolling Stone as an example, but like I can appreciate it more when I break it down into the achievable parts that I can't argue that I did. So like the first piece, you can't go backwards on this thing. So like the first piece I did was an interview with this guy who is like the internet's #1 Kanye West expert. And so like to do that story, it meant I had to find this guy, I had to have an idea, I had to have the idea accepted, I had to research, I had to ask him questions, I had to like set up a time to interview, I had to transcribe it, I had to write it and send it in and get feedback and, you know, go through all these steps. And these tasks require like skills and planning and experience that I know that I have because they're things that I've done a lot of times. So as much as like this result was really overwhelming, the parts that it took to get there were, you know, I can't argue with the fact that I did those things. So it's comforting and it's encouraging to just do the work and to see the work. Sorry, I didn't want to use a Nike logo, but that's what I Googled to find this. And I know how to do the work, I've done the work, and the work is the stuff that really matters. It's easy to get wrapped up in the bigger picture of feeling threatened by certain jobs or publications or opportunities, or thinking of them as being out of your reach, or that areas of the creative industries are inaccessible to us. And whether it's because these outlets or jobs mean a lot to us personally, or because we don't have enough experience, or because we've seen other people do it and think that there's one less thing that we can do. And that point makes me want to tell you this theory that my boss tells me all the time, which is that success is not a zero-sum game, which means that like if you think that success is like one jelly bean, this is what a lot of people think of it as. There's like a certain number of jelly beans, and once someone takes one away, that's one less for you. But success is really like this. There are so many jelly beans, and they're not in a jar, and there's enough for everybody. So that idea that I mentioned earlier, that I feel like an imposter because other people are trying to achieve the things that I feel like I've been given, is kind of bullshit, because there are enough achievements and potential for success for everybody, and we don't have to kind of, you know, I feel like a lot of creative pursuits are wrapped up in like jealousy or feeling intimidated, or I don't know, maybe that's just me. Is that not just me? I don't know, okay. Yeah, success isn't a finite number of jelly beans in a jar, and the supply of it doesn't have an end point, because when one person takes one, that doesn't leave one less for you. And I just wanted to mention that. So no matter what you do, I didn't have a visual for this, so I just put in like one of my dodgy to-do lists, but if you break down a job into achievable parts and churn it out and do the work, do those tasks one by one and cross them off your to-do list, you can shock yourself, coming back to the theme, by what you can get done. Take this talk, for example. On Tuesday, I was asked to do it. My initial thought was, I can't do this. What would I say? Who's going to get out of bed to come and listen to me early on a Friday morning? But I broke it down into parts. I had my idea, I researched, I put a keynote together, I wrote a script, I charged my iPad. I put in my script, I got out of bed early and washed my hair, but I clearly didn't do that. But I practiced once more on the tram coming here. I did all these little tasks, and so the end result isn't so overwhelming when the tasks are achievable. And now I've talked for like 20 minutes, and then it's done, and now it's finished. That's the end.